I'm actually so proud to see Naomi finally going back into a final since 2022. And I feel like not only for Naomi, but this also just marks sort of a chapter in the 2025 season where we'll see a lot of new things, new players that's coming up, and some older players that are trying to maybe continue their success or trying to attempt to come back. Welcome, tennis fans, to Tennis Traverse, Exploring the Game, the podcast that delves into the heart of the tennis world. In today's episode, we're talking about just some tournaments preparing the players for Australia, which is coming up in a shorter time than you think. And I want to start off by saying I actually traveled back from China to the US yesterday. So while I landed this around 1 a.m.-ish. I got home around 1 a.m.-ish. So I have my microphone, so the sound quality will be way better. I'm sorry that I couldn't carry this microphone to China with me just because of how heavy it is, and I could already barely fit anything into my luggage. So for any of you guys that are interested, I'm using the Blue Yeti microphone. I'll link it for you guys if you guys want to check it out if you want to start a podcast. But yeah, I feel like this year one of my goal is also to just expand my podcast, and because I'm done with writing college essays, I think I really want to just dive more into podcasting and maybe even come up with some other projects that I'm not working on yet. No promises, but I think I really want to just do more in the podcasting industry. But now let's get right into today's episode. And yeah, so I want to talk about just some tournaments before the Australian Open and how different players are preparing for the Australian Open, which is the first Grand Slam. So I want to start off by talking about the United Cup, which is a tournament that is sort of like an exhibition-ish tournament, but the only reason why a lot of great players are participating in that tournament is because it is sort of their only tournament before the Australian Open, and that's why a lot of players such as Iga Swiatek, Casper Ruud, Paula Badosa, they're all participating in that tournament because it's preparing them, and that's, I feel like, one of the reasons why they're treating the United Cup so seriously. But I really like the format of the United Cup, and I think it is, in a way, better than the Davis Cup and the Billie Jean Cup because we're actually combining the women's and the men's tennis, and the doubles is a mixed doubles tournament, which is really different from the Billie Jean King Cup, which is only the women's side, and the Davis Cup, which is only the men's side. And I think however, the only reason why it thrives with just so many incredible players competing in this tournament is because of when it is held, because it's held prior to Australia, so that's why a lot of players want to use it as an opportunity to just try to prepare themselves. So yeah, but I think a lot of top players chooses this tournament because it's not it doesn't affect their rankings whatsoever, and it's sort of like a lighthearted tournament, and I feel like it gets the players to relax because they're hanging out with friends from the same country as them and they know them really well. So I think that's why, it's just such a chill tournament that a lot of high-ranked player chooses to participate. But I want to talk about some observations and just some matches that I think are really worth noting. So the first one being an observation, which is Alexander Zverev and Elena Rybakina. So I feel like Rybakina actually came back from just all of the things that happened last year, and I feel like she had such a better a positive mindset going into 2025 because I feel like there's less expectations on her. I feel like a lot of people isn't expecting too much from her, but I feel like it's a good thing because she changed her coach and she's just such she has like such a new perspective on things, and I feel like Alexander Shevchenko really looked up to Rybakina, so that's something I really like about the dynamics of the Kazakhstani team. And some matches that I think are worth noting is the match between Qin Yugao and Bia Haddad Maya. It was a 3-hour match. I feel like that's one of the longer matches we'll have this season, and it's only the start of the season, the very start. But you guys should definitely watch that match. I feel like I'll link it for you guys, but it's just a match where there was a lot of grinding, but still we saw a lot of like both players cramping, and I feel like a lot of people think that because it's the start of the season that their players are going to be all revived and their conditions are going to be perfect. However, because they haven't played a match in so long, I feel like on the contrary, sometimes they really need that real match like repetition, but because they haven't played a match in so long, their bodies are all extremely tired. So that's where the cramping can come in. And just something that also caught my attention is the Greek team, Maria Sakkari, losing to Buzas Manurino, sorry if I mispronounced the name, with a score of 2-6, 1-6. So I feel like Sakkari really just hasn't had the best season at all. I feel like just we had such high expectations on her, especially at the start. We really expected her to go really deep in Grand Slam, even with a potential Grand Slam title contender. However, the reality is she really doesn't do really well at Grand Slams. And I feel like just because of how much we put expectations on her, that it's just she's not what she is before, and still just seeing her lose to like a player with a score of 1-6, 2-6, which is a player that she probably should have won, is just a really sad thing. But yeah. And I want to talk about the Italy team, because Italy, I feel like, is such a like sort of established themselves as a tennis dynasty, just because they won both the Billie Jean King Cup and the Davis Cup. However, I feel like for the United Cup, not a lot of players chose to participate. For example, Yannick Sinner didn't participate. So we just have Jasmine Paolini and Fabio Cavalli, Sarah Irani, which are still fascinating players, but we don't have the top players like Lorenzo Musetti, Yannick Sinner, who's participating. So there really isn't that much sort of like, they're not performing as well. For example, they lost to Czechia. But the match I want to talk about, I personally didn't watch the match, but the scoreline shocked me, which is Jasmine Paolini losing to Karolina Mukova with a score of 2-6, 2-6. I feel like Paolini really proved herself to be such an important force last year that this scoreline is really surprising, even though I'm not taking anything away from Mukova. In fact, I'm actually really looking forward to this matchup in the upcoming season, because just of how Paolini plays and just how like Mukova really treats tennis as like just this, I feel like an art. And it's just that their dynamics is super, and how they match up is really great. However, I just didn't expect Paolini to lose 2-6, 2-6, because I feel like Mukova isn't in that great of a form too, just because Mukova lost to Coco Gauff with a score of 1-6, 4-6. But at the same time, Paolini is playing great, because she did beat Paquette with a score of 6-0, 6-2 in just an hour. So I'm not taking anything away from any of them. It's just that the scoreline is a little bit shocking for me. But that's that. And I also want to talk about, apart from the United Cup, I want to talk about the ASB Classic tournament. So this took place in Auckland, New Zealand, and despite it being a great tournament, there has been a lot of rain delays. The one thing that I really looked away from, so what am I saying? Like the one thing that I really took note about this tournament is they have like courtside seats. Like you could sit sort of basically on the court. Well, not directly on the court, but there's a section where you're basically eye level from the court, and there's like a table where you can eat food and stuff. But it's really cool. And yeah, that's something really insane to think about, because I feel like a lot of other tournament doesn't have that. And the men's is still in qualifying, so we're not sure who's participating for the men's, but we have some people who are participating, such as Per Cod, who I will talk about later, who also participated in Brisbane, but also players like Raleigh Opelka and Serendulo Shelton, who was the number 1 seed, are all participating. But for the women's, I just want to talk about the number 5th seed Clara Towson, the number 1st seed Madison Keys, and the number 7th seed Naomi Osaka. So I want to start off by talking about Clara Towson, who actually beat Madison Keys. I feel like Towson is such an emerging talent. I feel like she has a similar feel to Madison Keys, where they're both extremely talented from the start. However, as time progresses, they have either been extremely bothered with injuries, or they just haven't competed as like on such like a higher level. But I feel like they're sort of like back, because Clara Towson made it to the final, beating Madison Keys. And Madison Keys, I did see her play against, I believe it was Christian, and she was striking the ball beautifully. Like, she was actually striking the ball incredibly. And it was such a wonderful thing to see, because I feel like she's considered as one of the players who is such a powerhouse and just hits the ball with the utmost clean sort of striking technique. And for the final, it's Clara Towson versus Naomi Osaka. I think this run is so meaningful for Naomi, but the thing I want to point out is her winning the 3-set match against Hailey Baptiste, because last year she's never won a 3-set match, and she lost the first set as well. Even though I know Baptiste did suffer from a foot injury, but just for her to finish the match and to close it out, I think is such a confidence boost. And as she said in her press conference, even though the results didn't show, but I feel like she did learn a lot from last year. And I mean, this is her first final. For sure, there's going to be a lot of pressure, but I really hope she gets the win, because I feel like it will be such a confidence boost and just propelling her in all the right directions towards Melbourne. But at the same time, I feel like she learned so much in a way that she can adjust herself to beat any opponent. She doesn't really have like one sort of set game. Obviously, her ball striking is phenomenal, but she's able to adjust. For example, when she played against Alicia Parks, who had such a powerful serve, she's able to adjust her game and try to just like rally and just win the point. And sometimes she's able to finish a point within 1 or 2 shots, which is really impressive. And I feel like I'm not sure if it's the partnership with Patrick that's sort of propelling her in this right direction, or is it that she just gained more experience from playing more. I mean, I think even though sometimes she really didn't play her best tennis, but for her to just find a way to come out and win, I think that's all that matters. And I feel like Naomi's a player that when she meets a strong player, she's going to try to match up to their level. But yeah, I feel like I really wish her the best in the final. I'm not going to watch it, but I really hope she beats Clara Towson. And yeah, so that's my whole segment on Naomi. And now I want to talk about Brisbane. So Brisbane actually is the tournament where a lot of top players such as Novak Djokovic and Aryna Sabalenka played. So let's talk about Brisbane. So I want to start off by talking about the men's side. So this is the first time we've seen Novak Djokovic play, although Andy Murray isn't there. But I mean, Djokovic last season, as I said many times, it's an okay-ish season just because he did find his form when he needed it the most. But apart from that, his season wasn't great compared to his previous seasons. But he's still the number 1 seed, and he played incredible. But I think the thing I want to mention, the 2 players I really want to mention, is Pericad and Opelka, because Pericad, he like rose up the ranking insane, like absolutely insane, and he beat Kyrgios in the first round. I'll leave a link for you guys. Insane match, 3 set, and it was like a tiebreaker for all 3 sets. He beat Francis Tiafoe, who obviously isn't the same level as he was 2 years ago, but he's still like such a tough opponent to beat, and went to the quarterfinal where he beat Mensik. And although he lost in the semifinal against Opelka, but still, I just really want to see him in Auckland and in Melbourne, because I think he's able to deliver such incredible results. And then Opelka, I made it to the final, which is something I did not expect. The thing that I did not expect is him beating Djokovic. I'll leave a link for this match as well, but absolutely insane. Like, I thought his career is like, the maximum he can get to is maybe like a quarterfinal in a slam. That's it. Winning a 500 title. But with him being actually on his game and using his serve is incredible. So yeah, but I think Djokovic has a lot to take away, and I mean, he really changed up his team a lot, so I'm really interested to see what that will take him. Before the final, it's between Opelka and Lehechka. I mean, Lehechka is also a player who just had some incredible seasons, but I mean, in the semifinals, he did receive a walkover from Dimitrov, who I really think maybe have a chance of matching up to his season last year. Like his last season. What am I even saying? But I mean, I really hope Lehechka and Opelka plays an incredible match, and I think that will come out of it. And for the women's side, I feel like there's a lot what am I saying? Sorry, I'm like a bit disoriented, but like for the women's side, I feel like it's such a sort of more dominant now compared to before. Like, I feel like it's sort of flipped, because before we always got the big 4 on the men's side, but now we've got players like Opelka and Lehechka making it to the finals. But on the women's side, we still got Sabalenka. However, there is a surprise sort of like loss, which happened, I think it happened when Emma Navarro lost to Beryl in the round of 32. But apart from that, really everything else is pretty much set in stone, because Sabalenka actually just flew through the tournament like she always does. I feel like she's just such a great player. She didn't drop a single set, and she's playing against Kudermetova in the final. And Kudermetova, to be honest, the only sort of tough opponent she beat, although she did come all the way from qualifying, the tough opponent she beat was Kasatkina, which, I mean, Kasatkina is known to have these sort of upsets, but she's still like an incredible player. So Kudermetova is doing really well, and I feel like sometimes we read too much into the beginning of a season, because we sort of like judge their start of like their first tournament directly to how they play in Grand Slams in Australia, but sometimes that's just not how it goes, because like the example I could think about is Naomi Osaka, who never goes to the final in the first tournament and then immediately winning Australia. So really, I feel like there's not that much connection, but we tend to judge a player. But I do want to say that, like, Sabalenka, for example, she did make it to the final and she did win Australia, so there is some sort of connection, but I'm just not really sure where the connection lies. But apart from that, that's all for today's episode. I really hope you guys enjoyed. I really like recording on this microphone. It just, I don't know, it makes me feel more professional. It makes me feel like I'm actually like a podcaster. So thank you so much for listening. If you haven't subscribed to this show on YouTube, you should. And if you haven't followed all my social medias, it's at Tennis Traverse. That is at Tennis Traverse. If you're listening on YouTube, comment, like, and subscribe. If you're listening on other streaming platforms, please rate my show. And I'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye.